Clearly, we still have major problems in the mines with getting mine operators to pay attention to worker safety, problems that need to be addressed. President Roberts and Mr. Stewart have eloquently spoken to these issues. We fully support the mine workers on these points. But the problem isn't limited to mines, and that's the fundamental point that I want to speak to here today. Just as the Mine Act needs to be strengthened to get mine operators to pay attention to safety and put safety before profits, so does the main law protecting worker safety and health, the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. The OSHA Act is a good law. It has saved lives, it has prevented injuries, but it has serious shortcomings and it is woefully out of date. Other than a civil penalty increase in 1990, the law has never been updated or strengthened in the 40 years since its passage. It has fallen behind the Mine Act, and it has fallen behind environmental laws designed to protect us from harm, from contaminated air, from contaminated water, from unsafe mines, but the OSHA Act has fallen far behind. Now, some would say the law is actually fine and that the problem that we face is just with a few bad actors out there. We disagree. This is a systemic problem that needs to be fixed. We still have more than 5,200 workers dying on the job each year, an average of 14 workers each and every day. Millions of workers are injured each year. OSHA has issued thousands of citations for violations of the OSHA Act in connection with those fatalities that I just referenced. This is not a matter of just happenstance, things happen. These are violations of the law that lead to worker fatalities and injuries, and it's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed. The average penalty for violating the OSHA law, a serious violation of the law that carries a substantial risk of death or serious injury, is $965. Even in cases where workers are killed, the average penalty is about $5,000. This is not enough to get employers to pay attention to safety and make investment in safety on the front end. It is too easy to write penalties like this off as just a cost of doing business. The criminal penalty provisions in the OSHA Act are even weaker. As you know, the maximum penalty under the law for willful violations of the law that result in a worker fatality is just 6 months in jail, which is a misdemeanor. And there's also, it carries a $250,000 fine. The penalties for polluting the environment or harassing protected wildlife on public lands are higher than the penalties for violating the OSHA law and killing workers. Because the penalties are so weak, the Department of Justice rarely prosecutes cases under the OSHA Act. One telling statistic, the Department of Justice brought 4 times more criminal cases last year for violations of the environmental laws than have been brought in the entire 40-year history of the OSHA Act. 4 times more cases in 1 year than in 40 years under the OSHA Act because the criminal penalty provisions are just so weak. Now, we've heard today that the bill is too punitive and what we need is more compliance assistance and cooperation, that penalties have nothing to do with promoting safety. But when OSHA only has enough inspectors to inspect workplaces once every 137 years on average, which is the case now, you have to have strong penalties when violations are found if the system is to work. Otherwise, the law just does not provide an adequate incentive for employers to comply with the law and protect workers. The penalties, in our view, have everything to do with bringing about greater compliance and prevention of problems before tragedies occur, and they're just too weak right now to make that happen. We've heard today about the importance of strong whistleblower protections and about making sure that workers are protected when they speak out about job hazards. And the whistleblower protections in the OSHA Act are the weakest of any of the 17 whistleblower laws enforced by OSHA. They're out of the mainstream of whistleblower protections passed by Congress over the past number of years, signed into law by both Republican and Democratic presidents. The details of these weaknesses are contained in my written statement, which is submitted for the record. Suffice it to say, the whistleblower protections in the OSHA Act are woefully out of date and really do not provide workers with recourse when they suffer discrimination for raising job hazards or exercising their rights under the law. They have 30 days to bring their case forward. They're dependent on the Secretary of Labor bringing their case. If the Secretary doesn't act, workers are out of luck. They have no private right of action, and this is completely out of the mainstream of whistleblower protection laws. So if we're serious about our commitment to worker safety and health, and this committee clearly is, and if we're serious about wanting to prevent deaths and injuries on the job, We need to strengthen the OSHA law and provide meaningful penalties that will bring about greater compliance before fatalities and injuries occur. We need to strengthen protections against retaliation for workers who raise job hazards. We need to get employers to correct hazards more quickly and not use the litigation process before the OSHA Review Commission to stall abatement and leave workers at risk. And that's what the Minor Safety and Health Act would do. If I may take just 20 seconds to make one more comment about the concerns that have been expressed here today about this bill costing employers money and that not being a good idea at a time when the economy is really struggling. We're for jobs. We're all for jobs. We're all for safe jobs. When we think about the costs here, you need to think about the costs of workplace fatalities, injuries, and illnesses. They're enormously expensive, not just in human terms, those costs are incalculable. You cannot bring a loved one back. But the financial costs of injuries and illnesses are $50 billion a year. And so we submit that preventing those injuries, preventing those fatalities, and eliminating those costs is actually good for the bottom line and good for the economy. So we strongly support this legislation and the OSHA Act provisions in it and urge its prompt adoption. Thank you.